He lived a quiet life, the kind of life that most people would hardly notice. Every morning, he opened his small electronics shop, unlocking the door with the same careful motion, sweeping the front and straightening the shelves as he always did. The shop was modest, filled with gadgets, wires, and small devices that attracted the occasional curious customer. On the surface, he seemed like any ordinary shop owner, someone who liked a simple life and preferred to stay out of trouble. His neighbors often waved at him when they passed by, thinking of him as polite, helpful, and always calm. There was a friendliness in his eyes, a quiet assurance that made people feel safe. Little did they know, behind that calm exterior was someone who had seen more danger and tension than anyone could imagine from their living room couches. He had spent years in elite military service, trained to face situations that most people only read about in books. The discipline and skill that came from those years were still with him. Even though he no longer carried the title or the uniform, he had chosen to leave that life behind, trading the adrenaline and danger for the steady rhythm of his shop. He enjoyed the quiet mornings, the gentle sound of the city waking up, and the soft conversations with customers who often became friends. But beneath the surface, he remained vigilant. He knew that life could be unpredictable, that danger could appear even in places that seemed safe. That awareness was second nature to him, not fear, just an understanding of how the world worked. The evening was falling, casting long shadows across the small streets. The sun dipped low, and the shop lights began to glow, a warm beacon in the approaching darkness. Most days ended peacefully, the few customers who lingered chatting before leaving him alone to close up and head home. He liked these moments, the quiet reflection at the end of the day. The simple satisfaction of a day well spent. Tonight felt different, in subtle ways he couldn't immediately place. There was a stillness in the air, a tension that he sensed but could not see. His instincts were alert, not with fear, but with awareness. He checked the doors and windows as he did every evening, making sure everything was secure. The routine was comforting, familiar. But tonight, every sound seemed a little louder, every shadow a little deeper. He shook off the feeling, telling himself it was just the wind or the city settling into night. He liked to trust his senses, and they rarely failed him, as the streets emptied. A pair of figures approached, moving quickly and quietly. They were not ordinary pedestrians or customers. There was an edge in their movements, a calculated boldness that betrayed their intentions. They reached the front of the shop, exchanging quick whispers and glances, confidence evident in their posture. They thought they had found an easy target, someone quiet and seemingly vulnerable. They did not know him, did not understand what they were about to face. He noticed them from the corner of his eye. The way their shadows stretched across the pavement, the unusual way they hesitated before moving closer. He didn't panic, didn't reach for anything, simply observed, noting every detail as he had been trained to do, seeing the world in patterns and behaviors, assessing potential threats without letting them know he was aware. There was no rush, no unnecessary movement. Everything about him was controlled, precise, calm. The two figures reached the door and tried to open it, testing it as if expecting no resistance. That small moment gave him all the information he needed. He remained behind the counter, pretending to be absorbed in organizing a small stack of receipts, eyes flicking toward the door. The air was thick with tension, though the intruders did not suspect it. They believed in their own boldness, convinced that this would be a simple matter of intimidation and quick gain. He remembered the lessons of patience from his past life. Acting too soon could provoke violence. Waiting and observing gave him an advantage. He stayed quiet, letting them reveal themselves fully. He watched the muscles in their arms tense as they forced the door, the slight panic that flitted across their faces when it didn't open as easily as expected. There was a subtle arrogance in their approach, a dangerous mix of confidence and ignorance. They assumed they were in control, that the situation was theirs to command. The shop felt unusually small as they entered, their steps deliberate, their eyes scanning the room for cash, valuables, or anything that could be taken. He kept his movements minimal, breathing steady, posture relaxed. They didn't know that the man they had chosen as a target was not only aware of every move, but had trained for situations far more dangerous than this. Every nerve in his body was alert, every instinct sharp, yet he maintained a calm exterior. He had learned long ago that fear showed weakness, and weakness could be exploited. They started demanding money. Voices low but forceful, trying to intimidate him with their assumed authority. He complied in a way that did not reveal his strength or awareness, slowly moving toward the cash register, hands visible, maintaining eye contact without showing fear. He understood the psychology of confrontation, how to keep people uncertain, how to control a situation without escalating it unnecessarily. A misstep from them, a careless gesture, a moment of overconfidence, gave him insight into their character. They were used to exploiting the vulnerable, relying on surprise and aggression, not expecting resistance. He had faced far tougher opponents in far more dangerous situations, and he knew how to use their own confidence against them. He remained patient, waiting for the exact moment to act, not recklessly, not with anger, but with precision and control. The night outside deepened, shadows stretching across the walls, lights flickering slightly from the street lamps. Every detail mattered to him: the placement of the intruders, the sounds of the city outside, the potential escape routes, the tools at his disposal. He had long learned that awareness was a weapon more powerful than any physical strength. The intruders did not notice his eyes, the subtle way he positioned himself, the quiet readiness that could turn a dangerous situation in an instant. The encounter could have gone very differently, but he had the advantage. He understood tension, timing, and control. He understood that people often underestimated those who appeared ordinary, assuming calmness was weakness, assuming humility was vulnerability. That assumption was about to be their downfall, though they did not yet realize it. He stayed composed, letting them reveal their intentions fully, understanding that knowledge was power. As they continued their attempts to intimidate him, he thought about the life he had left behind, the missions, the training, the experiences that shaped him into someone capable of handling extreme danger. That past was quiet now, behind the ordinary life he led, but it had not left him. It was a silent strength, a steady presence that ensured he would never be truly unprepared. And tonight, it would be tested, though he did not seek conflict, only to protect himself and maintain control. He continued to act the part of a compliant shop owner, slow and deliberate, letting the intruders think they were in command. But his mind was racing with strategies, analyzing each movement, each word, each gesture, ready to respond at the perfect moment. The quietness of the shop contrasted sharply with the tension in the room, a calm before a storm they did not anticipate. He had faced chaos before, and chaos did not intimidate him. It only sharpened his focus. Time seemed to stretch, every second filled with potential and risk. He remained calm, aware, and ready, knowing that the night could take a turn at any moment. The intruders were confident, unaware of the man they had chosen to challenge. He watched, waited, and planned, every detail significant, every subtle clue noted. They were about to learn a lesson that would change everything, though that lesson had not yet begun. And so the evening continued. A quiet, tense dance between ordinary appearance and extraordinary skill, between overconfidence and disciplined patience. The small shop, filled with gadgets and everyday items, held within it a depth of experience and readiness that no ordinary observer could perceive. The night was still young, and the story of what was about to unfold was only beginning. Hidden in the calm eyes of a man who was much more than he seemed, the intruders stepped into the shop, their eyes scanning the room as if they were hunting for prey. Their confidence was clear in the way they held themselves, the careless gestures, and the loud whispers that carried across the small space. They expected the man behind the counter to flinch, to tremble, maybe even to beg. They were wrong. He stayed calm, standing in a relaxed but alert posture, his eyes following their every move. His hands were visible, resting lightly on the counter, showing no sign of aggression or fear. He could feel the tension building, subtle but unmistakable. His instincts, honed over years of training, told him exactly how these men thought and what they expected. They assumed he was ordinary, unaware of the depth of his past experiences. In a split second, he assessed the room, the shelves, the gadgets, the possible cover points, the escape routes, and even the weaknesses in their approach. Every detail mattered, and every second counted. The taller of the two men grabbed the cash register with a rough hand, slamming it open. He demanded money in a sharp, forceful tone. The man behind the counter moved slowly, deliberately, reaching for the bills in a way that did not provoke them. His movements were controlled. Careful, precise, designed to show compliance while keeping his mind completely focused on the situation. He knew that one wrong move from either side could escalate things. The room seemed smaller now, charged with anticipation. Every noise seemed louder than usual. The other intruder began rifling through small drawers and shelves. Tossing gadgets aside carelessly, he muttered under his breath, frustrated by the lack of valuables worth his attention. Both men were confident, sure of themselves, thinking that the night would end quickly with their loot in hand. They did not notice the way the man's eyes followed their hands, the way his fingers brushed lightly against the counter. Ready to move at the perfect moment, he remembered the lessons from his past missions. Patience was as important as action. Acting too soon could provoke a dangerous response, but waiting and observing gave him the advantage. He studied them silently, noting their nervous tics, the hesitation in their movements, the subtle tension in their grips on the weapons. They believed they were in control, but control was an illusion. He had learned long ago how to turn such situations to his advantage. The intruders were loud now, voices raised slightly as frustration set in. They tried to intimidate him further, speaking in harsh, threatening tones. He continued to respond with calmness, answering only as needed, maintaining a steady, unthreatened demeanor. They assumed that fearlessness meant weakness, that a lack of visible resistance indicated vulnerability. They could not have been more wrong. His mind was working quickly, calculating possibilities, weighing risks, and considering outcomes. He recognized the dangerous pattern in their approach. They relied on shock, aggression, and assumption, not on skill or strategy. He had faced opponents who were far more ruthless and clever, and he knew that the key to survival was control over both the environment and the perceptions of those around him. One of the intruders gestured threateningly toward a shelf of electronics, knocking over a stack of small devices. The noise made the shop owner flinch slightly, but only in a natural human way, not out of fear. He had learned that subtle signals could buy time, distract opponents, and create openings. Every sound, every movement, every gesture was part of a larger pattern he analyzed instinctively. The taller man leaned closer, his voice low and menacing. He demanded a faster response, pressing for cash, for valuables, for something to prove that the man was not resisting. The shop owner moved with deliberate slowness, keeping his hands visible, maintaining a calm expression. He allowed the intruders to underestimate him, to believe that he was just a quiet, compliant man. They were blind to the experience and training that lay just beneath the surface. A small sound outside the shop caught his attention, a distant step or a shifting shadow. He registered it instantly, noting it as part of the situational awareness that had kept him alive in countless dangerous situations. He had learned to integrate every detail, even those that seemed minor, into a complete understanding of the environment. It was not paranoia. It was preparation, vigilance, and readiness. The intruders continued, growing more frustrated as they found less than they expected. They tossed items carelessly, muttering threats, showing irritation at the lack of immediate rewards. The shop owner remained calm, assessing the situation, considering options, and waiting for the precise moment to act. The tension in the room was thick, almost tangible, and he could feel the intruders' confidence starting to waver. Though they did not notice it themselves, he thought about the training that had shaped him. The hours of discipline, the experiences in environments where any mistake could be fatal. All that knowledge was now silent, ready, and unyielding. He did not seek confrontation, but he would not allow ignorance and arrogance to threaten him or his space. Every instinct told him the situation could escalate, and every instinct told him that patience was the first step toward control. One of the intruders leaned too close to the counter, their hand brushing against a small tool he had within reach. He noted the movement, recognizing the opportunity it presented. He remained calm, allowing them to think that the situation was still in their favor. Inside, he prepared to shift the balance, knowing exactly when and how to move, using their mistakes against them without unnecessary risk. Minutes stretched, and the intruder's frustration grew. Their gestures became sharper, voices louder, and confidence less certain. The shop owner stayed composed, a silent observer, ready to act at the perfect moment. He had faced unpredictable danger before, and knew that control often came from understanding, patience, and timing. They were moving through predictable patterns, blind to the reality of the person they had confronted. He allowed a small slip to occur, a gesture that seemed careless but was intentional. The intruders reacted instinctively, revealing more of their weaknesses. He noticed the tension in their shoulders, the tightening of their grip on the weapon, the slight hesitation before speaking. Every detail added to the complete picture in his mind. He did not need to raise his voice or brandish a weapon yet. His awareness alone shifted the dynamics subtly but significantly. Outside, the city continued its rhythm, unaware of the tension inside the small shop. Lights flickered, distant voices carried, and the ordinary world pressed on. Inside, a different story unfolded, one that combined calmness, vigilance, the hidden skill of a man who had faced danger beyond imagination. The intruders still believed they were in control. Unaware that the tide was slowly turning against them, the shop owner considered his options carefully, weighing the risks and the potential outcomes. He knew that he could neutralize the situation quickly if needed. But he also understood the value of restraint and strategic patience. He prepared mentally for the moment that would shift everything, allowing the intruders to believe in their dominance while he maintained true control. It was a delicate balance, one that required focus, discipline, experience. Time passed, each second heightening the tension, sharpening the focus, and building the anticipation. The intruders, oblivious to the growing imbalance, continued their clumsy search, growing increasingly frustrated. The shop owner remained calm, human, and measured, a silent force that contrasted sharply with the reckless confidence before him. He was patient, observant, and ready, waiting for the precise moment when the ordinary would become extraordinary, and the intruders would realize that they had underestimated someone far beyond their comprehension. In that small shop, filled with gadgets and everyday objects, a quiet battle of awareness, patience, and human skill unfolded. The ordinary exterior concealed the extraordinary, and the night was poised on the edge of revelation. The intruders did not know it yet, but the moment when they would regret underestimating him was approaching rapidly. The calmness, experience, and readiness that had been cultivated over years of intense training were about to reveal themselves, turning what began as a simple robbery into a night they would never forget. The tension in the shop had reached a breaking point. The intruders, frustrated and anxious, did not realize they were slowly losing control. Their voices, once confident and sharp, began to waver slightly. Every movement they made was watched carefully, noted, and analyzed by the man behind the counter. He moved with deliberate calm, every gesture controlled, every breath measured. He did not rush, but he was ready to act instantly if the situation required it. The taller intruder slammed a hand on the counter, demanding answers and threatening violence. The shop owner maintained eye contact, calm and unshaken. There was a quiet authority in the way he stood, a presence that drew attention without words. The intruders were beginning to feel the subtle unease that comes when someone they believe is weak suddenly radiates control. They had expected fear, hesitation, compliance, but instead, there was calm, confidence, and awareness. That simple shift unsettled them more than any physical confrontation could. He remembered the countless hours of preparation, the missions, the strategies, the intense training that had shaped him. Every skill he had learned over years in dangerous situations now had a purpose, though he had hoped never to use it here. Still, he was ready. The intruders, by contrast, relied on intimidation and force, not skill or experience. They were walking into a situation they could not fully comprehend, and their misjudgment was becoming clear in subtle ways: the shaking of a hand, a glance that lingered too long, a hesitation before speaking. The shop owner's mind worked quickly, not with panic but with precision. He began to guide the intruder's movements subtly, directing them away from areas where they might find something useful and keeping them distracted with conversation and calm gestures. He spoke softly, deliberately, choosing his words to appear compliant, but in fact buying time and assessing every variable. His attention did not waver from their actions. Every twitch, every glance, every whispered word was catalogued in his mind. One of the intruders bent over the cash register, fumbling with bills, clearly annoyed by the lack of immediate reward. The shop owner noticed a slight misalignment in the intruder's posture, a subtle shift in balance that revealed vulnerability. Years of combat training had taught him to recognize these signs instantly. He did not move yet, but he prepared. The intruders believed themselves in control, yet with each passing second, the situation tilted ever more subtly in his favor. The shorter intruder picked up a small electronic device from a shelf, tossing it carelessly aside when it didn't meet his expectations. Frustration was building, and it was visible now in their body language. The shop owner used this to his advantage, keeping calm, appearing human, vulnerable even, but always aware. His every movement, though slight, was intentional. He let them underestimate him, giving the illusion of weakness while silently plotting the sequence of actions that could neutralize the threat. Outside, the night was quiet, shadows stretching across the streets and shop windows. The world carried on, unaware of the unfolding drama inside. Inside, every detail mattered. The shop owner had positioned himself with awareness of cover, escape routes, and potential tools within reach. He was patient, calm, and unhurried. The intruders, confident in their dominance, remained oblivious to the shift in power dynamics. A sudden sound, a door creaking, or a distant footstep, caught his attention briefly, but he did not flinch. He used these distractions as part of his mental map of the situation, preparing for every possibility. The intruders were tense now, their earlier confidence fading slightly as subtle cues indicated they were no longer in full control. Their movements became hurried, more obvious, and less cautious. Each small error added to his advantage, though they had no idea it was happening. The taller intruder leaned over the counter, reaching for more money, his grip firm but careless. The shop owner took the slightest of steps back, shifting his weight ever so slightly, enough to unbalance the intruder's perception. It was a minor adjustment, but one that changed the dynamic of the encounter. Every move was deliberate, every reaction controlled. The intruders were being drawn into a situation they could not dominate, all without the shop owner raising his voice or brandishing a weapon. He thought about the lives he had led, the missions that had demanded complete focus, strategy, and control. Every lesson learned had a purpose now. Patience, observation, subtle manipulation, control of perception, these were his tools. The intruders relied on raw intimidation, noise, and threats. He understood that this imbalance would soon reach its peak, but he remained calm, waiting for the exact moment to act decisively if needed. One of the intruders gestured angrily toward a shelf, knocking over several small gadgets. The shop owner made a small sound of acknowledgement, the kind a human might make when startled but not alarmed. This simple action caused the intruder to pause briefly, and in that microsecond, the shop owner analyzed his posture, balance, and reaction time. Every detail mattered, and he cataloged it all silently. The intruders began arguing quietly between themselves, frustration mounting. They had expected compliance, simplicity, and quick results. Instead, they faced a man who seemed human and vulnerable, but radiated awareness and control. Their assumption of superiority was fading as subtle clues of his true nature emerged, though they could not yet place them. The tension was thick, almost electric. But the shop owner did not act hastily. He allowed them to continue their fumbling, their misplaced confidence feeding his understanding of their behavior. Every nervous glance, every misstep, every hesitation built a picture of their mindset and approach. He remained calm, controlled, and human in appearance, the perfect foil for their arrogance. The room seemed alive with anticipation. though the intruders were unaware of the shift that had already occurred. A single slip, a gesture too large, a miscalculation provided a window. The shop owner's mind calculated possibilities instantly, as it had countless times before. He did not move yet, but readiness radiated from him, subtle but undeniable. His calmness now held a quiet power, a presence that made even these bold intruders hesitate without realizing why. The room felt smaller, the intruders' movements more cautious, their confidence faltering with each passing moment. He thought of the ordinary world outside, the quiet streets and soft lights, completely unaware of the drama unfolding in a small shop. It was almost humorous how the intruders believed the night was theirs to control. They did not understand the depth of experience and skill they had underestimated. Every step they took, every movement, was being measured against years of disciplined preparation, instinct, and training. Time slowed in a way that only high-stakes tension can create. Every heartbeat, every breath, every glance was part of the unfolding drama. The shop owner remained calm, human, and composed, ready for the moment when the ordinary would reveal the extraordinary. He had the advantage, though the intruders could not yet perceive it. He did not rush. He did not panic. He observed, analyzed, and prepared. The intruders were now visibly unsettled, exchanging nervous glances, their movements less assured. The shop owner's calm, his silent readiness, was beginning to dominate the space. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it was happening. The confidence they had relied upon was eroding, replaced by doubt and unease. It walked into a situation they could not control, and slowly, invisibly, the tables were beginning to turn. A sudden movement, a shift in balance, a minor sound, all registered instantly. The shop owner adjusted subtly, positioning himself to maximize control without creating alarm. Every movement, every gesture was intentional, carefully calculated. The intruders continued, unaware that they were edging closer to a moment that would redefine the night. The ordinary exterior concealed a readiness and skill that was now coming to life, prepared to transform the situation in a way the intruders could never have anticipated. The air was thick with anticipation, a quiet tension that seemed to hum in the small space. The intruders were tense, frustrated, and increasingly aware of subtle shifts they could not explain. The shop owner remained composed, human, patient, and fully aware. He had trained for far more dangerous situations. He knew that control often came through calm, observation, timing, and strategic patience. The intruders had walked into a storm they could not see, and it was about to break, though they had no inkling of it yet. The moment arrived without warning, sudden and decisive. The taller intruder reached for the cash one more time, confident that the shop owner would continue to comply. The shop owner, standing with calm authority, waited, observing every movement with precise awareness. In a single fluid motion, he moved to intercept, not with aggression, but with controlled power that instantly unbalanced the intruder. The taller man stumbled slightly, his confidence wavering as he realized that the man he thought was vulnerable was anything but. The shorter intruder froze, his eyes widening as he finally recognized the quiet intensity of the man before him. In a flash, the shop owner's presence filled the room with authority. He had not yet touched either of them, yet the air itself seemed to shift. His training, his experience, and his instinct combined into a force that was subtle, invisible, and undeniable. The intruders were paralyzed by the sudden clarity that they had underestimated him completely. With deliberate precision, he moved to control the taller man, using leverage and positioning to neutralize his balance without harm. The man on the floor realized too late that brute force was useless here. Every motion the shop owner made was informed by years of tactical experience, ensuring control with minimal risk. The taller intruder's weapon was disarmed almost before he could react, and the shock was evident in his eyes. The shorter intruder made a sudden move, desperate to regain control. His voice rose in panic, threats spilling out faster than reason could follow. The shop owner did not flinch, remained calm, assessing, anticipating. With a simple shift of weight and a subtle maneuver, he disarmed the second intruder as well, guiding him down to the floor without unnecessary force. Within seconds, both intruders were subdued, stunned by the realization that the quiet shop owner was far from ordinary. The room, once filled with tension and aggression, now held a strange silence. The intruders were on the floor, their bravado shattered. They had walked in believing they were in command, and now they understood the stark reality of their misjudgment. The shop owner stood above them, calm, human, and in control. No words were needed. His presence conveyed the shift in power clearly. He crouched slightly, maintaining eye contact without threat, and spoke in a low, steady voice. Every word was measured, deliberate, and commanding respect. The intruders listened, their earlier confidence replaced by confusion and fear. Began to comprehend the truth too late. The man they had tried to intimidate was a former Delta Force commander, a person whose skill and experience went far beyond what they could have imagined. The taller intruder's hands shook as he tried to comprehend the situation. He realized that the shop owner had anticipated their every move, turned their aggression against them, and done so without unnecessary violence. It was a precision and control that left them dumbfounded. The room felt charged with a new energy, one of authority, skill, and unwavering human resolve. The shop owner slowly stood upright, surveying the room, noting every detail, every subtle sign of tension or hesitation. He was aware of the intruders' state of mind, their fear, and their realization that they were no longer in control. He had turned what could have been a dangerous encounter into a controlled situation using calm, awareness, and experience. The contrast between their panic and his composure was stark, a lesson they would not forget outside. The quiet streets continued, unaware of the drama unfolding inside the small shop, inside a story of human skill. Patience and control had played out, leaving the intruders humbled and shocked. The shop owner's mind remained alert, scanning for any additional risk. Aware that even subdued, the intruders were unpredictable. He did not underestimate the potential for sudden movement or rash action. He spoke again, slowly, instructing them to remain still and explaining that no harm would come to them if they complied. His tone was firm but fair, human, and measured. The intruders obeyed, recognizing the authority in his words and the certainty in his presence. They realized that they had crossed a line, chosen the wrong person, and underestimated someone whose skills could not be matched by intimidation or force. The shop owner's movements were deliberate as he secured the situation further, making sure neither intruder could reach a weapon or escape. He moved calmly around the room, every gesture controlled, every decision informed by experience. It was a demonstration of human skill, patience, and strategic thinking, all visible in the subtle but unmistakable control he held over the situation. Minutes passed, though it felt like hours to the intruders. They sat on the floor, subdued, watching the man who had once seemed ordinary now revealed as extraordinary. Every detail of their overconfidence, every moment they assumed they were in control, had been used against them without harm. They were humbled, realizing that they had no real power in the room. The shop owner reflected briefly on the irony. The life he had left behind, the missions, the discipline, and the experiences that shaped him had all prepared him for moments like this. Even if they were far removed from the chaos of military operations, he did not seek recognition or attention. He wanted only to resolve the situation safely, to turn a potential threat into a lesson in awareness and respect. He contacted authorities calmly, explaining the events and ensuring that the intruders would face the consequences of their actions. His focus remained on clarity, fairness, and safety. The intruders listened, still in shock, as the reality of their choices became clear. The consequences of underestimating someone who seemed ordinary but was anything but were now tangible. When the authorities arrived, the intruders were taken into custody, still reeling from the encounter. The story quickly spread, not as a tale of violence, but as a lesson in human skill, courage, and control. The shop owner returned to his normal routine, opening the doors the next day with the same calm demeanor, a quiet smile acknowledging the experience. He had maintained his life, his safety, and his principles, demonstrating that true power often lies in awareness, patience, and self-control. The incident became a cautionary tale, a a story repeated among those who had heard it. It was not about fear or aggression, but about the remarkable human capacity to remain calm, analyze, and control even in the most tense situations. The shop owner continued his life, respected, unassuming, and prepared, a quiet guardian of his space and his peace. The intruders, humbled and aware of their mistake, never underestimated anyone again, carrying the memory of a quiet man whose experience and skill had turned what could have been a disaster into a lesson they would never forget. The next morning, the shop felt calm again, almost as if nothing had happened. Sunlight filtered through the windows, illuminating the shelves and gadgets that lined the walls. The man behind the counter moved with the same quiet precision, arranging items and straightening displays. He greeted the early customers with a calm smile, the kind of warmth that made them feel welcome. Unaware of the events of the previous night, despite the normalcy of the morning, he remained alert. His senses, sharpened by years of experience, scanned the room, noting every movement, every sound. The intruders were gone, taken into custody by the authorities, but the awareness of what could have happened lingered. He understood that life could present unexpected dangers, and being prepared was a responsibility he had long accepted. Word of the incident had spread quietly among neighbors and local business owners. They spoke of the quiet shop owner with newfound respect, amazed that someone they had always seen as ordinary could possess such skill, calm, and control. The story became a lesson not of violence, but of awareness and courage, showing that appearances could be deceiving and that true strength often lay in patience, observation, and self-control. The man reflected on the previous night, thinking about the intruders and their assumptions. They had believed that confidence and aggression could control a situation, but they had underestimated experience, calmness, and the subtle power of human awareness. He did not take pleasure in their fear, only in the knowledge that the encounter had been resolved without unnecessary harm, and that the lesson had been clear. Throughout the day, customers came and went, unaware of the tension that had filled the shop only hours before. The man greeted each person warmly, answered questions about gadgets, and offered advice with a gentle patience. In every interaction, he carried a quiet strength, a sense of presence that drew people in and reassured them. He understood that power was not always about force, but often about calm confidence, and the ability to control oneself and one's surroundings. He also thought about the intruder's state of mind. They had entered the shop with assumptions, relying on fear and intimidation to achieve their goals. Now they were humbled, facing the consequences of their choices. It was a reminder that judgment based on appearances could be dangerously misleading, and that awareness and skill often went unnoticed until it was too late. The encounter had been a lesson for both sides. The one had learned it the hard way. As the day continued, the man moved through his routine with the same quiet efficiency that had defined his life before the incident. He stocked shelves, repaired small electronics, and engaged with customers in casual conversation. Yet, beneath the ordinary tasks, there was an undercurrent of readiness, a subtle vigilance that never faded. He had learned that life could change in an instant, and being prepared was a quiet responsibility, not a burden. He remembered the moments of tension from the previous night, how every detail had mattered, every movement had significance. The calmness he had maintained, the observation and subtle guidance of the intruder's actions, had shifted the balance without unnecessary confrontation. It was a reminder of the power of patience, awareness, and controlled response. He carried that knowledge with him now, a quiet confidence that was both a shield and a guide. Throughout the afternoon, local residents came to hear the story secondhand, and the man listened with humility as they recounted the events. He did not seek attention or praise, only quietly accepted the respect that came from people realizing that there was more to him than met the eye. The story became part of the neighborhood's lore, a tale of courage, skill, and human resilience. Evening approached, and the man closed the shop with the same careful attention he had shown every day. The streets were quiet, the sky painted in hues of orange and pink. He paused for a moment outside, taking in the calm of the neighborhood. The intruders were gone, and life was returning to its normal rhythm, but he remained aware, alert, and ready for whatever challenges might come next. He reflected on the lessons from the experience. True strength was not loud or aggressive. It was calm, measured, and patient. It was the ability to observe, assess, and respond with precision. It was understanding that appearances could deceive and that skill, experience, and awareness often went unnoticed until they were needed most. The encounter had reinforced everything he had learned over years of preparation, and he felt a quiet satisfaction in knowing that he had managed the situation wisely. Neighbors continued to speak of the quiet shop owner with newfound respect, amazed at the courage and skill that had emerged from someone they had always seen as ordinary. The intruder's story became a cautionary tale, a lesson that confidence and aggression alone could not overcome. Experience, awareness, and human skill. The man behind the counter continued his life with humility, ready, prepared, and respected, but not seeking recognition. Night fell, and the shop was darkened, lights dimmed, and doors locked securely. The man moved inside with a calm rhythm, reflecting on the day and the lessons of the encounter. He knew that life would continue with its ordinary moments and occasional unexpected challenges. He was ready, as he had always been, to meet them with calmness, awareness, and the quiet strength of human skill. The incident had changed the perception of the shop owner among those who knew him. No longer was he simply a quiet man running a small business. He had shown that courage, skill, patience could turn a dangerous situation into a lesson, leaving others with respect and a story that would be remembered. Intruders, humbled and aware of their mistake, would carry the memory of the night with them forever. And the neighborhood would carry the story of the quiet shop owner whose calm and experience turned what could have been disaster into a demonstration of human resilience. In the quiet of the night, the man sat in the small back room of his shop, thinking about the day, the events, and the lessons learned. He had acted with control, awareness, and patience, and the result had been successful without unnecessary harm. It was a reminder of the power of human skill, the importance of vigilance, and the quiet strength that often goes unnoticed. The night was peaceful, the neighborhood safe, and the shop owner ready for whatever tomorrow might bring, carrying the lessons of courage, awareness, and respect with him always.